Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Before we get started today, if you're enjoying these explorations, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and also make sure you click the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any future deep dives. So today we're going to be looking at SACEP.
ACP.
Yeah, SACEP stands for the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program.
Okay.
It might not be a name that you hear every day, but it's actually doing some super important work in the realm of environmental diplomacy in South Asia.
Yeah.
And this is especially, I think, relevant for anyone out there who's preparing for the UPSC exams.
Oh, absolutely. Especially that GS2 paper, the one on international relations. SCCEP is, well, it's a perfect example of how regional cooperation can really work. And if you want to really get a grasp on how environmental diplomacy functions in South Asia, you got to understand SCEP.
Exactly. It's like, imagine you're at this big international summit.
Okay, yeah.
But instead of, countries hashing out trade deals, they're coming together to tackle climate change, fight pollution, and protect this incredible biodiversity that we see in the region. We're talking about mangrove forests, coral reefs.
Oh, yeah. Some incredible ecosystem. Absolutely vital, not just for South Asia, but for the whole planet, really.
I mean, really, the whole planet.
Yeah. And what I think is so fascinating about SACEP is that they get it. They understand that you can't just deal with environmental problems as if they're in a bubble.
Yeah.
Everything's connected, right? So they're not just pushing for conservation without thinking about the people, the folks whose lives are tied to these environments.
Right. So it's not just about hugging trees and, forgetting about people. They're thinking about the whole picture.
Absolutely. It's a much more holistic approach.
That's great. So before we really get into the specifics of what they do, let's break down how this organization actually works. It's kind of like a multi-layered cake, maybe?
A very organized cake.
Yeah.
So you've got the governing council, right? And that sits right at the top. It's made up of ministers from each of the 8 member states. And that's where the big decisions get made, like the overall direction that SCP takes.
Okay.
Then you've got this consultative committee. That's where the diplomats come in. They hash out the details of how things are actually going to get implemented. And then holding it all together, making sure the wheels keep turning, is the secretariat.
The secretariat.
Yeah, based in Colombo, Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So it's a pretty impressive setup, really.
So it's not just a casual get-together like a bunch of countries having a chat over tea.
No.
There's real structure here.
Absolutely. It's about turning those good intentions into actual actions. You know what I mean?
That's great. Yeah, and the structure, it seems like it's designed to make sure that everyone has a say. It's not just one country calling all the shots.
Right. Decisions aren't made unilaterally. It's all about consultation and consensus.
Right.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, think about the political landscape of South Asia.
Well, they're diverse.
It is. So, yeah, it's a way to make sure everyone feels heard.
That makes a lot of sense. But with all these different perspectives, how do they even figure out what their mission is?
Right.
Where do they even begin?
Well, at the heart of it all, you have this idea of regional cooperation, right? That's what SAP is all about. It's promoting sustainable development, making sure those natural resources are conserved, and working with other organizations on a global level.
Oh, okay.
The idea is to recognize that a lot of these environmental issues, they don't care about borders. They go beyond them.
That's true.
So by working together, these countries can achieve a lot more than they could on their own.
So it's kind of like united we stand, divided we fall.
Exactly.
Huh.
But in this case, it's about the environment.
I like that. Applied to the environment. Okay, so do you have a specific example just so we can kind of see this in action?
Oh, sure. Take, for example, the recent Memorandum of Understanding between India and SEP.
Okay, a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU.
Yeah, exactly. And this one was all about tackling oil and chemical pollution in the South Asian seas. That's a prime example of how ASEP translates its mission into something tangible, real action.
Right, yeah.
It's not just a theoretical idea. It's about addressing real-world problems that affect millions of people in the region.
That's great. So it's not just happening in a lab or something. These are real problems that people are dealing with every day.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point to remember. ASEP isn't just about having these high-level policy discussions. They're focused on the everyday environmental challenges that people in South Asia actually face.
So they're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Precisely. And to really understand that, I think we need to take a closer look at some of the specific issues they're tackling. Welcome back to our deep dive on ASEP.
Yeah. ACC.
So before we went into how ASEP is structured and how it functions, we mentioned that it looks at the bigger picture, like how environmental issues are connected to economic and social development. So now let's take a closer look at some of the specific areas where they're actually making a difference.
Okay, so what kind of challenges are we talking about? Like, what do they actually do? Is it just, planting trees, cleaning up beaches? What is it?
Oh, it's way more than that.
Oh, okay.
SACP, they have all these different programs, right? They're
Yeah.
addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, air and water pollution, waste management, you name it, they're probably working on it.
Wow.
And remember those mangrove forests and coral reefs? Those really important ecosystems we talked about?
Uh-huh.
Well, SEC is working hard to protect them. They know those ecosystems are important, not just because they're beautiful and full of life, but because people's livelihoods depend on them.
Right, yeah. It's not just about saving the cute animals.
Exactly. It's about protecting the resources that people rely on to survive.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And, they're also tackling some really tough issues like plastic pollution,
Oh, yeah.
which has become a huge problem for marine life and coastal communities.
I've seen pictures. It's terrible.
It is, it is. And actually, the 15th SAC meeting that happened in Dhaka,
Yeah.
well, they really focused on the need for regional cooperation to deal with this growing problem of plastic waste.
I think I read something about that meeting. It sounds like they're really getting down to business, tackling these real-world problems that affect so many people.
That's a great way to put it. They're definitely not just sitting around in some office somewhere.
Well,
They're out there on the ground, finding solutions that work for both people and the planet.
okay, yeah, that's good. So how do they do that? How do they go about finding these solutions? Do you have any specific examples?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One area where they've been really active is transboundary air pollution.
Well, it's transboundary air pollution.
It's basically when air pollution from one country crosses over into another.
Oh, okay.
And they actually helped create a regional agreement to deal with this issue. It's a big problem in South Asia, especially with all the industrialization and urbanization happening.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem. I mean, smog doesn't exactly respect national boundaries, right?
Exactly. And it's not a simple problem to solve either.
No.
It takes cooperation between countries. They have to monitor air quality, share data, come up with strategies to reduce emissions.
It sounds kind of complicated.
Oh, it definitely is. It's like walking a diplomatic tightrope. You're trying to balance environmental concerns with economic development.
Yeah, you don't want to stifle anyone's growth.
Right. It's a delicate balance for sure.
Hmm.
And it's not just about air pollution either. They're really involved in marine environmental protection as well. Remember that MOU between India and SACEP to tackle oil and chemical pollution?
Oh, yeah.
That's a perfect example. They're working on a bunch of different things to prevent those oil spills from happening, promote sustainable fisheries, and protect that marine biodiversity.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And this is all super important because millions of people in South Asia depend on the ocean for their livelihood.
It's all connected.
It is. Protecting the environment isn't just about preserving nature. It's about protecting the resources that people need, for food, for jobs, for survival.
Right, it has an impact on people's everyday lives.
Absolutely. And SEC, that's that. They understand how everything is interconnected, so they're not just focusing on environmental protection in a vacuum.
Okay.
They're working to make sure that environmental considerations are included in economic and social development policies.
That's a much better approach.
Yeah, it's not about choosing one or the other. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone, for people, and for the planet.
That's fantastic.
It's about finding that sweet spot, where environmental protection and economic growth can go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So they're promoting sustainable livelihoods, ecotourism, things like that. And they have all these capacity building initiatives to empower local communities to protect their own environments while also improving their lives.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's not about just telling people what to do. It's about giving them the tools and the knowledge to make sustainable choices for themselves.
That's a much more empowering way to do it. So they're not just coming in with a prepackaged solution.
Oh, no.
They're working with the communities to figure out what will work best for them.
Exactly. And they're tackling these complex issues that need a regional approach.
Okay.
For example, they've been really instrumental in creating several marine protected areas.
Marine protected areas, what are those?
They're basically areas in the ocean that are set aside for conservation.
Oh,
It's kind of like a national park, but for the ocean.
I get it.
And protecting these areas, it's super important for safeguarding biodiversity and making sure our oceans stay healthy.
Makes sense. So what other kinds of things are they doing?
Well, they've also been working to help develop national environmental policies and action plans in the member countries, helping them integrate environmental considerations into their own development strategies.
So they're not just focusing on the regional level, they're helping countries at the national level, too.
Yeah. It's about building capacity at the national level, which is super important for long-term sustainability. It's not just about quick fixes. It's about making real, lasting change.
I like that, yeah.
And they're not just working within South Asia either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're collaborating with international organizations like the UN Environment Program, UNEP, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF,
Okay, BUN.
to get more resources, share knowledge, and make sure their efforts are aligned with global goals.
It sounds like they're really well connected in that whole global environmental network, making sure that what they're doing is part of the bigger picture.
They are. They really are. And they're always looking for new and creative ways to deal with environmental challenges.
Okay.
Like they've been exploring using satellite technology for environmental monitoring and assessment.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's great that they're embracing these new technologies.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to tackle tough and sensitive issues either.
Like what?
Well, for example, they've been working to raise awareness about the impacts of climate change in the region.
Yeah, climate change.
South Asia is especially vulnerable to things like sea level rise and extreme weather events.
Right. I mean, climate change is a global problem.
It is.
But it seems like the poorest and most vulnerable communities are often the ones who suffer the most.
That's true. And SEP is doing a great job of bringing attention to this and trying to find solutions.
Good. What are they doing?
Well, they're advocating for policies and investments that will help the region adapt to climate change and build resilience.
Okay.
Because this is really a critical issue for the future of South Asia.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're not just reacting to problems, they're thinking ahead and trying to stay one step ahead of the curve.
That's good. I mean, it's impressive how much they're doing. But I'm sure they face a lot of challenges too, right? We've talked about the diversity of the region and the need to get everyone on board. But what other obstacles do they have to deal with?
Well, funding is a big one.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a challenge for any environmental organization, and SACEP is no exception. They rely heavily on contributions from member countries and international donors.
Okay.
And that can be really unpredictable.
Yeah,
And oftentimes, it's just not enough to meet the growing demands.
I could see that.
You know, environmental protection isn't always seen as a top priority.
Yeah, I can see that, especially when governments have so many other things to worry about, like poverty, healthcare, education. You know, it's hard to prioritize.
It is. And of course, there are always political considerations to navigate as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course, politics.
Environmental concerns can sometimes clash with economic interests or national sovereignty, so it can be tricky to find solutions that everyone's happy with.
Oh, I bet.
It really is a delicate balancing act. But it's amazing that ASEP manages to navigate all these challenges and still make so much progress on so many different issues.
It really is impressive. It shows how important this work is. Protecting the environment isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have. And ASEP is playing a vital role in making sure South Asia has a healthier, more sustainable future.
Yeah.
So we've learned that SACEP is involved in so many different things, from protecting biodiversity and promoting sustainable development to addressing climate change. They're working on the ground, they're building capacity, they're collaborating internationally, and they're using cutting-edge technology to find solutions. It's really incredible. But what do you think ties all of this together? What's the common thread?
I think it's the power of diplomacy. SACEP is really all about using diplomacy as a tool to protect the environment.
Diplomacy, huh? So it's not just scientists and, policymakers stuck in their labs and conference rooms.
No.
It's about building relationships, right?
It is.
Fostering trust, finding some kind of common ground.
Exactly. Think about it. You're trying to navigate the interests of 8 different countries, each with their own unique challenges and priorities.
Yeah, that's a lot to juggle.
It is. And that's where diplomacy comes in. SAC is like this neutral platform, almost like an environmental Switzerland.
Environmental Switzerland, I like that.
It's where these countries can come together, discuss these really complex issues, share what they know, and hopefully find solutions that everyone can live with.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
But, they've been pretty successful, right? We talked about that regional agreement on transboundary air pollution.
Yeah.
That took some serious diplomatic skills to get done.
You're telling me getting 8 countries to agree on anything is a feat, let alone something as complicated as air pollution.
Yeah.
But that's what SAC does, They find ways to bridge those gaps to get everyone working together.
So how do they do that? What's their secret? What tools do they use?
Well, one of the big ones is capacity building. They do a ton of training programs.
Training programs.
Yeah. For government officials, scientists, even people from civil society organizations.
Oh, wow.
They give them the knowledge and the skills to actually tackle those environmental challenges back home.
So it's like teach a person to fish, they can feed themselves for life.
Exactly.
But in this case, it's about teaching people how to protect their environment for the long term.
That's a great way to put it. And they go even further than that. They do these public awareness campaigns, workshops, all sorts of events.
Really?
Yeah, to spread the word about these environmental issues, encourage people to get involved.
So it's not just happening behind closed doors. They're getting everyone involved.
They are. It's about building those connections, that sense of shared responsibility. It's diplomacy in action, and it's actually making a difference.
So ACCPP, it's kind of like this unsung hero working behind the scenes to protect the environment through, well, diplomacy. But what does all this mean for our listeners, for people like us?
I think it's a great reminder that even in a world where it feels like we're constantly divided by politics and borders, we can still find ways to cooperate, to take action together. Especially for those of you interested in international relations and global environmental issues.
It's inspiring, right?
It is.
SCP is showing us that even small steps, when we take them together, can have a big impact. It's a perfect example of what can happen when countries put their differences aside and work together to address these challenges that, well, they affect us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it highlights the fact that this isn't just a regional issue, Protecting the environment, it's a global imperative. And organizations like SCEP, they're leading the charge, showing us that it is possible to make a difference.
That's a great point. Well, on that note of hope and inspiration, we're going to wrap up our deep dives into SCC.
Yeah, we hope this gave you a better understanding of this really important organization and why their work is so crucial, especially when you think about international relations and global environmental challenges.
And hey, if you learned something new today and want to keep exploring these topics, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our future deep dives.
Until next time, keep learning, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep into the world around you.